My name is Samantha, I'm 28 years old. I'm working while taking care of house duties, married for 2 years to a guy I met at a social gathering. We don't have kids, but I think we had a good relationship. However, it seems I was the only one who thought so. I'll be going then. Okay, take care. Since our work schedules and days off vary, we made a rule that the person off from work handles the chores. But his study was an exception. No one but him is allowed in there. He says it's because there are piles of documents that he can't have messed with. I didn't intend to clean his study that day either, but something told me. I just couldn't help being curious about it. Just a little won't hurt, as long as I don't move anything around. With that excuse, I entered his study. Huh. It's surprisingly clean. I've never seen him clean it before. Maybe he cleans when I'm at work? What's this? The room was cleaner than I expected, and the first thing that caught my eye was a chest that's been there since we got married. From the bottom drawer of that chest, the edge of a paper was sticking out. I can't tell if he's meticulous or sloppy. If it's important documents, they should be properly stored. I decided to properly put away the documents in the drawer. But the paper that was sticking out turned out to be shocking. What is this? A divorce paper? Why? Yes, that piece of paper was a divorce paper. And the husband section is already filled out, so he's planning to divorce me. Why? The unexpected presence of the divorce paper suddenly made me anxious, and forgetting that I was told no entry, I rummaged through the drawer further. And then I found. What is this? Who is Kelsey? And why is there a wedding venue brochure and an estimate? A form with the name of a woman I don't know, and brochures and estimates from a wedding venue that seems to offer an experience like being abroad. Holding those documents, my mind went blank. I was in complete panic. Just then, my phone rang at just the right time. Hello? It's me. Do you have time right now? You're off today, right? I just got the day off too. How about we meet for coffee at a cafe? The call was from Shannon, a mutual friend of mine and my husband. I told Shannon everything that had just happened. No way! Is Steve cheating? And with a divorce paper and an estimate from a wedding venue. That means he's definitely preparing to confront you with a divorce, planning to switch from you to that woman. But I can't believe he would cheat. He always lets me know when he's gonna be late from work, and he didn't seem like he had someone else. Well, of course. People who cheat openly are rare. Plus, Samantha has weekdays off, and Steve has weekends off. It's easy to cheat in that kind of environment, and I've heard that the second year of marriage is when infidelity often happens. It actually happened to us. Shannon, who had divorced due to her husband's infidelity, responded to my story. So what do you want to do, Samantha? What? What are you gonna do about the future? What am I gonna do? He's preparing for a divorce, which means he probably plans to divorce you without revealing his infidelity and not letting others realize he's at fault. And then, casually remarry that Kelsey. While you're grieving, he'd just live happily as if nothing happened. Is that okay with you? That's. As a friend of both Samantha and Steve and as someone who's been through a divorce, I'd say, Samantha, you're probably thinking about ignoring what you found in the study. Pretending like nothing happened. But I think that's impossible. He's prepared that much. Even if you pretend not to see his infidelity, or even if you confront him about it, the result will be the same. He'll just confront you with the divorce paper he's prepared. Wouldn't it be better to act before he does? Hearing those words, I was startled. Somewhere deep down, I had hoped. If I confronted my husband about noticing the cheating, he would beg for forgiveness. But realistically, it's nearly impossible for that to happen. Even if it did, now that the trust is gone, it wouldn't last long between us. Encouraged by Shannon's words, I made a decision. Shannon's right. No matter how things turn out, divorce is waiting down the line. If that's the case, I need to make him regret his infidelity through a revenge that makes him truly suffer. Pretending to be a happy couple in public while doing this behind my back is just laughable. Samantha. Thanks to you, Shannon, I've woken up. Thank you. I'll never forgive him. I'll make him pay, drag him through hell. With that, I packed my things and the documents from his study into a bag and left the house we had lived in for years. And that night, when Steve came home from work and noticed something was off, he called me. Hello? Where are you right now? The house is a mess. What do you mean? What do I mean? It looks like we've been robbed. A robbery? Yes, a lot of stuff is missing. The bedroom closet is empty. But the front door was locked, and no windows were broken. I'm going to call the police to investigate, so I don't know where you are, but come back soon, Samantha. There's no need to call the police. Huh? Why not? It looks like we've been robbed. Normally, you'd call right away. That's because it wasn't a robbery. I just packed up my things and left the house. You left the house? What are you saying? I went into your study today. You went into the study? I told you that the room was off limits. I know. But I had a bad feeling and let myself in. Then I saw a bit of paper sticking out from the bottom drawer of that chest we've had since we got married. You always said there were important documents in that study, so I figured that document must be important too, and decided to open the drawer and store it properly. Wait, don't tell me that paper was… Exactly, you know what it is. It's no surprise. You prepared a divorce paper. What? What were you thinking, hiding such things in a study I couldn't enter? What do you mean, what was I thinking? Over the phone, I could hear Steve's turmoil. Then, in his confusion, he blurted out to me. Never mind that. How dare you enter the study I told you was off limits? You're invading privacy, that's breaking and entering. What breaking and entering? Don't make me laugh. If a married couple entering each other's rooms is breaking and entering, then almost all married couples would be guilty. Besides, who signed the lease for that house? Forgot already? That condo has been rented under my name since before we got married. You just moved in and we got married, right? So the lease is still in my name. I was just entering a room in my own house. Well, that's… Steve tried to blame me for entering the study to divert from his infidelity, but it failed, and he fell silent. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Wait a minute. What? I want to talk. Can you come back home? Talk? What is there to talk about with you? I think there are some misunderstandings about the divorce papers and stuff. Sorry, but I have nothing to talk about with you. And now we are strangers. What you do or think is none of my business. What? Strangers? Yes, strangers. It helped that you diligently prepared. The divorce paper was trapped in that drawer, so I filled out my section and submitted it to the city hall this afternoon. So you and I are no longer husband and wife, just strangers. You submitted it yourself? Yes, but is there a problem? By the way, I'm planning to terminate the lease on that room, so you better pack up and move out quickly. Without any discussion. That's so selfish. Who's being selfish? You are the one who prepared those papers with the intention of divorcing. Anyway, we need to talk. Where are you right now? That's none of your business. It matters. I want to talk to you. So just come back home for now. That's when my husband yelled at me to come back home. The nerve you have yelling after cheating. You've got some guts. What? That voice, could it be, oh, Dad? After I left that house, I headed to my in-laws' home, which is about a 15-minute walk from my own place. Why did I go there instead of my own parents' house? A man who can't cherish his wife has no right to preach. What do you mean come back home, you idiot? If you have something to say, you come here. My father-in-law is a passionate carpenter who is well known for his deep sense of duty and love for his wife. You can imagine what would happen if he heard about his son's affair. That's why, instead of going to my parents' house, I went to the home of my father-in-law, a devoted husband. Well, What happened to that energy you had earlier? You were yelling loudly at Samantha to come back, but now you can't say anything in front of me. You're really a ridiculous guy, even if you are my son. You said you had something to talk about with Samantha, right? Then hurry up and come to our house. His impact was profound. My husband, completely intimidated by his father's words, could no longer object, and agreed to come over for a discussion which was really just an excuse to talk. 15 minutes later. I'm home. My ex-husband arrived at his parents' home, apprehensively. As he opened the front door, there stood his father, imposingly. So you've come. Let's hear your excuses then. And so, the four of us, my ex-husband, his parents, and I, began our discussion. So, what's this talk about? You said there's been a misunderstanding, right? Yes, it's a misunderstanding. I was being stalked. I was forced to have those forms by that woman who was threatening me. A stalker? What do you mean? The woman named Kelsey. She's my stalker. I did have a relationship with her. I only meant it as a bit of fun. But when she found out I was married, she said she didn't know what she'd do if I didn't divorce you and marry her. I had no choice but to write it. According to him, he had no intention of divorcing. The divorce papers were forced upon him by this woman who became his stalker. That's why I never intended to divorce you. Then why were those forms carefully kept in a drawer? That's because I thought it would hurt you if you saw them. What do you mean it would hurt? If they were really written under duress by a stalker, you should have just thrown them away. It's different. I have to show her those 2 forms periodically or she goes crazy. If I don't have them, I don't know what she might do. So, you're still with someone unpredictable and dangerous, just making excuses? That's... Hey, why don't you stop lying? I'm not lying. I know everything. I know who this Kelsey is, where she's from, and what you were thinking. While you were at work, I had a friend help me investigate. What? Just before I left the house, Shannon had told me this on the phone. Do you have any ideas on how to get revenge? Right now, all you have is that divorce form, right? You should gather more evidence if you want to really make Steve suffer. But how do I get evidence? I went to college with Steve, so I can ask around among people who knew him. Maybe someone knows something. And as Shannon reached out to his friends, several people mentioned they had seen him walking with a young woman. One of them even captured a video of their encounter. Shannon got the video from her friend and forwarded it to me. Wait, this station where the 2 are holding hands. It's in his workplace. What? So, the mistress might be someone from his company? That's highly possible. Did the friend who filmed this mention anything else? Yeah, let me think. Oh, right, they both had matching keychains on their bags. Look, it's hard to see, but there's a green bear keychain wearing a green outfit on the bag. Shannon, please thank the friend who filmed this. What? This green outfit bear is an original keychain from his company, and these keychains are not for sale, only employees have them. But could Steve have given this keychain to his mistress? I don't think that's possible. I once begged him for one of those keychains. I'd love to give you one, but each employee only gets one, he told me. This keychain is a badge of employment. We are always supposed to wear our keychains. Plus, we get them at the orientation, so no one really knows who handles them or where they are. That's what he told me. So, it's almost certain, no, definitely certain that the mistress is someone from the office. Relying on that information, I rummaged through his study and gathered evidence. How about it? Find anything? It's more than just finding something. I now understand why he kept this study off limits. This room is full of evidence of his affair with the mistress. With all this, he can't make any excuses. The study contained 2 shot photos with the mistress, letters, and even a diary detailing where they went and what they did. And the ultimate piece was his computer. When I opened it, there was no password, a reckless state. He must have trusted me completely, having never entered this room in our 2 years of marriage. The computer was packed with various kinds of evidence that I can't even speak of here. After thanking Shannon, I took all the evidence and headed to my in-laws' house. The day he said he was on a business trip, he was at a resort with her. On another day, they stayed at a hotel attached to an amusement park. On days when I was at work and he was off, they went on day trips. He's smiling so broadly in these photos, and yet he calls her a stalker? How could you do such a thing? Cheating and then lying on top of that. It's different. Just hear me out. Your side of the story? What other excuses could you possibly have? But no matter what you say, it's useless. With this incontrovertible evidence, no one will believe your story. Ugh. Then, as if resigning himself, he admitted to the affair and started to explain. Yes, that's right. She was a new employee who joined last year. Initially, I had no such intentions. But then she approached me, and... So that led to your affair? Does she know you're married? Yes, she knows. We work in the same department. It's impossible she wouldn't know. Actually, half of what I said earlier is true. She pressured me to divorce you and marry her, saying she'd storm our house if I didn't. So those divorce papers were also meant to protect you. But ultimately, you were planning to divorce me and marry her, right? There was also an exchange between the two of you. You were trying to divorce me smoothly without letting our friends or anyone else know, so you wouldn't ruin your reputation, right? But now I don't care anymore because it's none of my business. Do whatever you like without me knowing. Samantha! I'm truly sorry. I didn't marry you to make you say such things. Forgive me for choosing another woman over you. Saying this, he inexplicably almost cried in front of me. Forgive you? Are you kidding me? Do you have any idea how much you've hurt Samantha? It should be Samantha who wants to cry. Why are you crying when you're the one who cheated? His parents blasted him. However, my revenge drama was not over yet. Your phone is ringing, isn't that your mistress? You better answer it quickly, and put it on speakerphone. Amid the tense atmosphere, the call on his smartphone came from the person in question. Hello. What do you want? This isn't a good time to be calling. Hey. That wedding venue we got an estimate for, did you book it without telling me? Huh. I thought it would take more time, but it was quicker than I expected. I'm really happy. Wait, what do you mean? I haven't done anything yet. Don't hide it. But you said you'd contact me right away, why didn't you? Oh, were you planning a surprise? What are you talking about? Actually, I just got a call from the wedding venue staff. They said the application for the wedding is complete, and we can start planning. They asked me for a convenient date. So I called Steve to confirm, but... At those words, he turned pale and glanced my way. Sorry, I'll call you back later. What? Wait a minute. What's the date for the reservation? Hey. Saying this, my ex-husband abruptly ended the call. You couldn't have, in my study. As he muttered this, I pulled out the wedding venue brochure and the estimate from my bag and threw them onto the desk. Just as you thought. I didn't mention it before, but what I found wasn't just the divorce papers. This was in the same drawer. So I went ahead and booked the wedding venue for you. What have you done? Why are you angry? Of course I am. That venue is much more expensive than the average. Normally, if you cancel right after making a reservation, the cancellation fee isn't that much. But that venue is so popular that even if you cancel right away, the fee is huge. But weren't you planning to have a wedding there with her, since you had the estimate made? No. That venue was just something she wanted to check out, so I reluctantly went along. You're lying again. I'm not lying. I really had no such intention. I told you, didn't I? I gathered evidence of the affair in your study. So what? You left WhatsApp synced to your computer. Just by opening it, I could see all the exchanges between you and your mistress. What? The messages synced to his computer read, "Hey, do you really think it will work out? Framing your wife for cheating and then getting a divorce from her? Don't worry. I saw someone on the internet who pulled it off. It's easy. I'll have a friend approach my wife and I'll take photos as evidence of her cheating. Then I'll confront her with the divorce papers. It's almost too good to be true, but surprisingly, it works. Really. I've run through it in my head so many times, it has to work. Once we get divorced, let's have our wedding at that venue Kelsey has been dreaming about. Really? Yes, really. It might still take some time to get divorced, but as soon as we finalize the divorce, I'll contact Kelsey right away. Can you wait until then? Yes. I'll wait. I love you. Yes, he planned to frame me for cheating and use it to fund a wedding at that venue. So you were going to pretend I cheated and hold a wedding at that venue. That's why you kept the brochures and estimates, right? Don't be silent, answer me. What were you thinking doing this? Stop lying and tell the truth. After being confronted by us, he admitted that everything I had said was true. His parents were furious upon hearing this. He ended up cutting ties with him, and it all turned into a huge debacle. Later, our divorce was finalized. It seems this scandal blew up big at the company where they worked. Consequently, the mistress resigned, and my ex-husband was transferred to another branch. However, their tragedy didn't end there. This was a few months later. Why did you choose such an expensive plan? Even the wedding dress could have been rented. Buying a custom-made one is just insane. It's all out of pocket now. Do you know how much this wedding is costing us? After that, he went against his parents' wishes and remarried the woman who was his mistress. It seems they decided to have a wedding at the venue I had booked. However, she chose one of the most expensive plans at that venue. Because of this, they had a huge argument about the wedding details and payments. It's your fault for not participating in the planning. Don't complain about decisions that have been made. But that's because I couldn't make it due to work. Steve said I could decide however I wanted this time. Even so, there's a limit. We're not billionaires, what are you thinking? Who do you think is paying for this? It's nice for you, quitting your job like you're running away, not doing any housework, just lounging at home. And now you want to have such an expensive wedding with someone else's money. What? You're saying this is my fault? Ultimately, this all started because of Steve, right? Don't worry, it will definitely work out, he said. So whose fault is it that we ended up like this? It's not just my fault, is it? After all, you knew I was married when you approached me. You must have known this is how it would end up. Are you seriously saying that? Of course I am. With just a few weeks to go until the wedding, their relationship had significantly worsened. However, canceling the wedding now would result in a huge cancellation fee, which they both wanted to avoid. So, they decided to go through with the wedding. But there was little hope for a successful marriage. A few months after the wedding. Did you hear about Steve? Apparently, he's having a really tough time. Really? Yeah, you heard that they forced their way through with the wedding, right? I've heard bits and pieces. It seems a significant rift developed between them during the wedding, and they ended up divorcing just 3 months after remarrying. Steve divorced his mistress-turned-wife in less than 3 months. Cut off by his parents, he is now living alone in a small place. And from what I heard from another friend, he deeply regrets divorcing Samantha. He's been snooping around trying to find her new contact info and where she moved to. But don't worry, no one is going to tell him anything. What do you mean? I made sure to spread the word around. I told everyone that his cheating was the cause of the divorce. No one would think of giving him Samantha's information knowing that. You knew it would end up like this and took precautions? If his relationship with his mistress failed, he might try to come crawling back to Samantha, so I took the initiative. From now on, don't think about him. Just focus on being happy, okay? Shannon. After that, Samantha never saw her ex-husband again. Just as Shannon said, it seems no one shared her information with him. I never imagined when I got married that things would end up like this 2 years later, but I have no regrets about how things turned out. From now on, I plan to live my life looking forward, without regretting my choices. I'm here to pick you up. Let's go home with Daddy. James, who left together with his mistress 9 years ago, cut off all ties with me and our daughter, Barbara. Upon learning something, he reappeared in front of us and approached Barbara. Seeing James, Barbara exclaimed with shocking words. "What? Who's this old man?" James was left speechless by her words, and more was yet to come. "My name is Linda Johnson. I'm a simple housewife who teaches piano lessons. My husband, James, is an elementary school teacher. We met through a mutual friend. I fell head over heels for the sincere and genuine James and confessed my feelings. Having little romantic experience, James was over the moon when I confessed and, from when we started dating, he apparently thought about marrying me. "You're the only one who'd marry me, Linda." He'd been saying such exaggerated things since we started dating, and every day he'd propose. Thinking he was probably just sweet-talking, I'd just nod along, thinking marriage was a long way off. "Linda, let's get married." But then, on my 25th birthday, he surprised me with an engagement ring. We had only been dating for about 6 months, and I remember being taken aback when he said it. However, when James sets his mind to something, he sees it through. I was young, and back then, I really wanted to get married, so one thing led to another and I accepted. However, my parents were strongly against our marriage since we hadn't even been together for a year. Both were working abroad, rarely in the US, and were genuinely concerned for me. However, due to James' relentless pursuit, both my father and mother eventually gave in, and by the end of that year, we tied the knot. He's a teacher, known for his sincerity. They probably couldn't find any better reason to oppose other than their own concerns. Since his student days, James had been working diligently, saving enough money for the two of us. He even created a detailed budget, showing my parents how much we'd need for the future. I reckon if I were in my parents' shoes, it'd be hard to keep opposing at that point. "If you're going that far, please make sure to make my daughter happy. She's our most precious treasure, after all." With that said, the parents gave their blessing for the marriage. I thought I was about to embark on a happy married life. However, life wasn't as smooth sailing as I had imagined. After getting married, I realized James was surprisingly sloppy and believed housework was a woman's job. Men should earn money outside and then live freely. He had this old-fashioned baby boomer mentality and never helped with the chores when he was home. "James, please. I've started working too, and it gets busy. Can't you help out a bit around the house? At the very least, take care of your clothes and prepare for tomorrow." Feeling overwhelmed by James leaving everything to me, I brought it up bravely before dinner. James, hearing this, was unexpectedly furious. He lashed out with words I had never heard from him before. "What? You just teach piano lessons and mostly goof off, right? Despite having a job that barely adds to our income, you want me to help with the housework? That's so entitled. Every day, I work hard from early morning, even being asked to advise for after-school clubs that don't pay, and then I come home mentally drained. The housework is your job since you earn less. Don't act all high and mighty when you have it easier." I couldn't believe my ears. He had never spoken to me this way, even when we were dating. His words, so dismissive of me, hurt more than anger me. Every day, I was berated for the most unreasonable things, and when I was at my lowest, I found out I was pregnant. James demanded that I have the baby. "My folks were looking forward to a grandchild. If you don't have it, there will be consequences," he warned. Hearing such a threat, I was at a loss. I had no expectations from James, but I felt this child could be my lifeline. With that hope, I decided to have the baby. But my morning sickness was worse than I expected, and I really didn't feel up to doing housework. My belly was growing, making it hard for me to move around, but James, as always, didn't help out at all around the house. Even when I felt terrible from the morning sickness, he would yell at me, saying, "You could at least go to the convenience store and grab a sandwich, couldn't you?" and wouldn't even shop for me. When I mentioned taking maternity leave from my piano teaching job, he got angry, accusing me of just trying to take time off and blaming how we were gonna make ends meet with reduced income. I wondered, can I really raise a child with this man? Such fears crossed my mind, and sure enough, those concerns became a reality. It was a safe delivery, and our daughter Barbara was born into our family. Barbara always smiles, sleeps well, and has truly become the light of my life. Unlike James, she's such a mama's girl, and having her around helps me get through the tough times. I enjoyed every day, cherishing those moments. But something happened to Barbara just before her 5th birthday. She seemed to have a fever. She was lethargic in the morning and had to skip preschool. "Mama, I feel sick." As Barbara lay down, she suddenly complained of nausea and started saying her arms and legs tingled like they were numb. This didn't seem like just a regular cold. I immediately called the hospital, and Barbara had to be taken by ambulance. Fortunately, it was during regular hours, so a specialist was available. Turns out, Barbara had infantile paralysis. Apparently, it was severe, and they diagnosed that she might have lasting effects from it. "What? Doctor, isn't there anything you can do? Can she live a normal life with these after effects?" Hearing the diagnosis alone, I was panicked. I clung to the doctor's arm, crying out, "Please save Barbara!" But there was not much that could be done. There was no specific cure for infantile paralysis, and they told me the only treatment available was symptomatic. I needed to discuss this with James and decide what to do next. I had hoped that at least when it came to Barbara, James would be supportive, but I was too naive. Unexpected words came out of James's mouth. "Barbara's sick. Don't be messing with me. It's probably because you never properly looked after Barbara." James was raging beyond belief, starting to blame me for Barbara contracting polio because of my supposed neglect. At this time in the US, there wasn't a quadrivalent vaccine available yet. The only way to prevent the polio virus was to get vaccinated. To be frank, there wasn't much that could be done if someone caught it. Yet, James kept blaming me entirely, showering me with words that seemed like he was trying to escape responsibility. "What are you gonna do if she ends up with lasting after effects and needs more care? You gonna take full responsibility for her?" James spewed these cruel words without a second thought. Hearing this, something inside me snapped. "Why do you push everything onto me when she's both our child?" "What? Polio's an unstoppable virus, okay? Other than vaccines, there's no effective prevention. Instead of blaming for what's happened, shouldn't we be discussing what to do next? Yet here you are, more concerned with pointing a finger rather than worrying about our daughter. Don't you feel any responsibility as a father?" I had never once complained about James since Barbara was born. I always kept silent out of fear that Barbara might get hurt if I didn't. But I had reached my breaking point. I feared that if I kept it in any longer, I might do something regrettable. Especially now that Barbara wasn't around, it was crucial to confront James. I thought so, and directly shared my feelings with him, but his response was something I never expected. "When did you think you could talk back to me like that?" James gave me a look of disdain, colder than anything I'd ever seen from him. Seeing that expression, a chill ran down my spine. "I didn't raise you to be a defiant wife. You should have just listened and obeyed me. I don't need you anymore. Get out." With that, James started to drive me out of our home. Confused by the sudden turn of events, I banged on the door repeatedly from the outside, pleading for him to let me back in. But there was no response from James, and the midwinter air pierced my skin. Why did this happen? Tears overflowed from the sheer pain, and that day, I ended up returning to the hospital barefooted. I left my cell phone and wallet at home. The nurse who saw me turned pale and immediately tended to me. Warm blankets, a drink, and the kind words of the nurses. Tears streamed down my eyes as I felt the warmth of people around me. The nurses contacted my mother and explained the situation. Linda! My mother, who was in the UK for work, decided to come home right away. She took over dealing with James, seeing that I was mentally exhausted. Leave him to me. You just focus on Barbara. Right now, she's the one fighting the hardest. Pull yourself together. she revived my soul, and it woke me up. I'm not the only one who's hurting. Barbara is still fighting to overcome the virus. Holding on to Barbara's hand as she struggled, she squeezed back, albeit weakly. I'm gonna fight on. Even without words, it felt like Barbara was telling me that. It made me realize I can't give up either. However, due to Barbara's severe polio, she had paralysis affecting her left lower half. She can move, but not freely at her own will. It's almost like she's numb. But her fever subsided, and she could talk properly. Barbara smiled as if to say she was okay. Who cares about one left leg? This is nothing. Thanks to you for bringing me to the hospital so soon. Heck, I'll even undergo rehab to make this leg move more. So, Mom, please don't blame yourself anymore because of me. Barbara, now regaining her strength, seemed to have realized everything. There were times when I secretly left the room to cry, and I constantly blamed myself thinking, it's all my fault. I was comforted as if she could see right through me. Hey, Mom. Where's Dad? He hasn't visited once. Is he busy? The moment Barbara mentioned her father, my heart sank. Barbara, can you listen calmly? I hesitated to tell the recovering Barbara the truth. However, I didn't want to hide anything from her. If she has to face a painful reality someday, I might as well tell her now. Gathering my thoughts, I told Barbara the painful truth. A divorce? Turns out, James had left Barbara and me to run off with his lover. When my mother went to James' house, everything was gone, except for my belongings. The only thing left on the table was a letter written about a divorce, and there was no trace of him other than that. When my mother tried calling James on the cell she'd given me, he coldly said, "Why would I care for a sick kid? I'm done with you. It's over between us." And with that, he hung up. Later on, when my mother visited his parents' house, they told her about James' current situation. Apparently, James had been seeing another woman for a while, and she got pregnant. Thinking of remarrying her out of responsibility. His parents apologized over and over, saying, "We're truly sorry for our foolish son." My mother talked to me about this, suggesting, "If you want to go to mediation and ask for child support, I'm all in." James' parents also agreed on this. However, I didn't want that. While I can't deny that I'm boiling with anger about everything, my mind is preoccupied with Barbara. I don't have the time to deal with such a deadbeat guy. I conveyed my thoughts to my mother, who, though frustrated, respected my decision. So, Dad cheated. Upon hearing the story, Barbara wasn't shocked. Instead, she thoughtfully uttered the word cheated. Thinking I might have upset her, I hurriedly looked into her face, and out of nowhere, she showed a chillingly bright smile. "In that case, Mom, I have a favor to ask." I was completely taken aback, feeling both scared and surprised by the situation. Listening to Barbara's words, she shared something shocking. 9 years later, Barbara entered 8th grade. She made a remarkable recovery and, after graduating from a special education school, started attending a public middle school. I opened my piano studio on my own. Now, I make a living out of it. Since then, we've faced countless challenges, but Barbara has been resilient, and I often find myself leaning on her for support. Just as I thought our smooth sailing days would continue, I spotted a stranger standing in front of our house. That day, Barbara and I were out shopping, and she was right beside me when I noticed the man. Wondering who he could be, we approached him, only to recognize him, and both of us wore expressions of shock. "I'm here to pick you up. Let's go home with Dad." To our surprise, it was James, the man who had abandoned us all those years ago, waiting for our return. Why was James at our home? More importantly, how dare he show up now after all this time? My anger and hatred surged instantly. Ignoring my evident discomfort, James tried to approach Barbara. "Don't you dare get close to her. Who do you think you are, acting like you're her dad now? What happened to your affair? Aren't you happy with your new family? Don't touch her with those filthy hands." Although Barbara has recovered, her left leg doesn't fully move. If James were to grab her now, she wouldn't be able to get away. Determined to protect her, I stood in front of James, not hesitating to confront him with biting words. "I don't need you. I came to see my daughter. Get out of my way." As he tried to forcibly move me aside, Barbara pulled my hand and, with a bright smile, delivered a shocking statement to James. Who's this guy? A friend of yours, Mom? He looks dirty and creepy. I wish he'd leave our house right now." "Huh?" Stunned by Barbara's words, James was left speechless. "It seems like you're referring to me as your daughter, but my only parent is my mom. I was told my dad passed away when I was young. I don't know you." Though I never told Barbara that her father had died, I quickly realized she was improvising on the spot. I was amazed by her quick thinking. Barbara didn't stop there. "Is it okay if I call the cops on this stranger? Or should I yell, 'Hey, someone, help. This weird guy's trying to kidnap me'?" Barbara didn't hesitate to raise her voice right in the middle of the street. Seeing this, James panicked and tried to silence her, but I firmly stood my ground. Hearing the commotion, our neighbors came out to see what was happening. "Are you okay, Barbara? Are you really some kind of creep? If you lay a hand on our Barbara, you're gonna regret it." "No, you've got it all wrong. I'm her father." "You're my father? Don't make me laugh." Upon hearing the claim of being her father, Barbara's cheerful expression vanished, and she glared coldly at James. "I don't have a father, and the only reason you're trying to contact me now is probably because of money, right? Ever since I became a singer-songwriter and started earning?" Hearing her words, James was taken aback and seemed lost for words. After that incident, Barbara asked me if she could start taking piano lessons. "Dad always told me to focus on my studies and not waste time on things like games, TV, or other hobbies. I should only study hard," he'd say. I later discovered that James had been pushing Barbara to excel academically, always trying to make her the best. Because of this, Barbara would secretly write letters to her friends and refrain from visiting them to avoid getting caught. "If your mom finds out, she'll spoil you. So, let's keep this a secret just between the two of us." I remember him saying that. Looking back, it's so creepy. It's not right for a real parent to take away a child's freedom. I finally understood when I saw Barbara laughing mockingly. She hated her father more than I did for robbing her of her life. That's why she said those words to me back then. "I love the way our mom plays the piano. When I grow up, I want to have a job related to the piano too. I'm gonna show everyone how wonderful the piano is." At the time, I didn't really get what she was talking about, but now I realized she was determined to prove James, who always mocked the piano, wrong. I realized for the first time that her words back then were filled with such ambition. Barbara was born with perfect pitch and had an extraordinary memory. Once she heard or saw something, she could remember it like a machine. Not only did she quickly memorize sheet music, but her piano skills also improved incredibly fast. On her own accord, she started voice training. Unsatisfied with just the piano, she began exploring various other instruments. On her days off, she'd perform with a guitar in front of the local train station and applied to numerous talent agency auditions. She used her challenges to her advantage, turning them into positive attributes. Because of her beautiful voice and the talent she exhibited at the young age of 14, she started getting offers from TV shows. Now, she tours all across the US as a singer-songwriter. "You must be kidding. I came here purely to see you. Then why did you abandon us back then?" As the crowd began to gather around us, I loudly recounted all of James' misdeeds for everyone to hear. "When Barbara got sick, you abandoned us because your mistress was pregnant, didn't you? When things didn't go your way, you'd shout and throw things around. Haven't you always been the worst kind of person? And now you come here claiming to be a father? Give me a break. Barbara and I have long since erased the memory of ever having a father." Hearing these shocking revelations, the neighbors were disgusted with James, and they stood by me. This is the town where I, Linda, grew up, a place known for its strong sense of community and loyalty. Everyone here has treated Barbara as if she was their own child, helping raise her. To them, it felt like their child was being insulted. The crowd began shouting insults at James.
I don't have a father. Why would I ever go back to a scumbag like you? I'm gonna live my life with my mom and friends. Never come back here, you womanizing piece of trash.
With that, Barbara threw her bag and jacket to the ground, signaling for the crowd to chase James away. The neighbors shouted at James to get away from Barbara as he desperately clung to my feet.
Linda. Please, help me. I admit I was wrong. From now on, I'll cherish you and Barbara. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Please, I'm begging you, forgive me.
James was on his knees, begging and rubbing his forehead against the ground. But looking at him, I felt nothing but disgust. After everything he'd done, this man believed that a simple apology would absolve him. I wanted to show him that life isn't that easy, so I bent down, put on a wide smile, and motioned for him to lift his head.
Look up, James. Linda. Please forgive me.
Think I'd get back with a guy like you? Not in a million years. Please never mention mine or Barbara's name again. If you ever show up here again, I'll report you to the police as a stalker. James, thinking he'd be forgiven, looked up only to be met with my eerily cheerful smile, leaving him speechless. He seemed to realize the end was near, standing on the brink of despair. And with that, James walked away from us in a daze. The neighbors were relieved that nothing bad happened to Barbara and me. Some of them, aware of our painful past, even shed tears of sympathy.
We'll be here for Barbara from now on, as her dad or big brother or whatever.
You're a bit too old to be called a big brother, ain't ya?
You got that right.
Everyone laughed it off in a cheerful mood, and before we knew it, the atmosphere lightened, and Barbara's smile returned. Apparently, the reason James visited us that day was because Barbara was featured on a TV music show and he happened to see me there. He was able to find our house since our home also functioned as a classroom. A bit of digging easily revealed our location. Word has it, his current wife is quite the spendthrift, and his paycheck alone couldn't keep them afloat, so he came crying to us for help. Some folks just never change. Guess it's good we tossed him out when we did, Mom? Maybe I should write a new song titled Trash and vent about all our past grievances. Jokingly said, my daughter. As scary as it was hearing those words from her, seeing Barbara enjoy life despite our hardships made me feel a bit glorious.
My son and I are starting a luxurious life abroad with his $3 million. Once you two divorce, you won't be able to make ends meet. If you want our address, get on your knees and lick my shoes. What? What are you talking about? What do you mean?
I had no clue what my mother-in-law was talking about. I never sensed that they were planning to go abroad or that they had been saving up money.
That's because I said my son got $3 million. We're gonna live the high life overseas, just the two of us. Why would my husband go abroad? And what's this about $3 million? Why do you want to know so badly? Well, if you really want to know, kneel down and beg, licking my shoes, and maybe I'll tell. What's with that attitude? Where is my husband? Oh, it's very comfortable here. We're enjoying the high life with my son's $3 million. So, you're no longer needed.
I was stunned by my mother-in-law's words. What on earth does it mean that my husband suddenly got $3 million and is living a luxurious life abroad? Moreover, the way she spoke about it, as if I was an outsider. I was filled with anger and anxiety, but I needed to calmly assess the situation. How on earth did my husband get such a huge sum of money? And is that $3 million possibly related to? I work as a manager at a major IT company. I met my husband in the same department and was drawn to his positive and cheerful nature, which led to our marriage. In the early years of our marriage, his parents warmly welcomed me. Later on, we had a daughter, who is now 14. I grew up in poverty and my parents were toxic. Having faced so many hardships, I was determined to cherish and love my daughter deeply while juggling work and household chores. However, one day my husband was assigned to a project in Texas and had to move there alone.
It'll be tough living alone with our daughter, I said. Yeah, taking care of work, household chores, and our daughter will be hard. Let's ask my mom to come over and help out. That might be a relief.
So, I reluctantly agreed to live with my mother-in-law.
Mommy, when will Daddy come back?
That's what my daughter asked.
It seems he'll be in Texas for a while. But don't worry, Grandma's coming over.
And so, my mother-in-law moved in with us. I had no idea that this decision would be the biggest regret of my life.
You're working late again today, huh? Women who neglect their families.
I'd come home from work to biting remarks from her.
I have a job too. And I take care of our daughter, I'd retort, but she was never satisfied. When I was young, the family was everything. The thought of working outside never crossed my mind.
Then, on the day my daughter got good grades at school, she said, "It's all thanks to me. What's the point of you? Maybe we don't need you around?" Despite my mother-in-law helping only with simple homework tasks, I'd been the one teaching my daughter most subjects. When I slightly messed up a dish, she'd pounce, "How did you and my son even survive before with such poor cooking skills?"
I'm doing my best. And everyone has their own way of doing things, I'd snap back.
My patience was wearing thin.
She doesn't do her chores.
She complained to my husband.
Mom, she's working too. Please try to understand.
My husband would chime in. However, living together, the relationship between my mother-in-law and me became increasingly strained. With my husband far away, I felt more isolated. One day, I decided to call my husband to discuss this.
Hello? You okay right now? Yeah, I'm good. What's up? It's kinda late.
Well, your mom gave me a piece of her mind about house chores, and it's really getting to me.
I'm sorry. Mom's always been a bit sharp-tongued. But maybe she has a point. Still, don't let it get to you too much. Just keep doing things at your own pace.
Feeling a bit reassured by my husband's words, I once again dedicated myself to our daily routine. But as my husband was away, the pressure from my mother-in-law kept building, and I was getting more and more worn out. Every day, I looked forward to my husband's return. Living with my mother-in-law without my husband around was challenging. Initially, I got by, holding on to the remnants of my husband's presence. But as days turned into weeks, her behavior grew even more unbearable, and I felt crushed under the weight. She'd nitpick everything I did from dawn till dusk and criticize me constantly. When I made my husband's favorite rice dish, she coldly remarked, "This tastes terrible. Who'd eat this?" Whenever I took a short break, she'd chastise me with, "How can a woman who can't even handle household chores take a break?" I never had much confidence in housework. With my husband, he'd just laugh off my little mistakes. In front of my mother-in-law, I realized I had no room for error. I think the way she treats me stems from her excessive love for her son. She seems unable to accept that he got married and moved away from her. This experience made me firmly resolve never to become an overbearing parent like her. One day, after treating myself to a small shopping spree at a local mall, my mother-in-law got wind of it. When I got home, she was waiting for me at the entrance, fuming.
How could you think of going out for fun when your husband isn't home? What do you think is happening with the household chores? I thought I needed a little break. A break? In this situation? All this trouble is happening because of your ineptitude.
After that, I awaited a call from my husband. I believed that hearing his voice might lighten my mood. But the content of his call was far from what I expected. "I've got some bad news. My work in Texas isn't going well. I got into gambling, and now I'm in a tight spot financially. I've also accumulated quite a debt."
What? Are you kidding me? Gambling and debt? This is way out of line. What's gonna happen to our future? And our daughters? I'm sorry, really sorry. I feel stuck right now. But trust me, I'll find a way. How? How do you plan to handle this? How much do you owe?
I'm working on a solution. I always thought of my husband as a sincere person who would never gamble. He was always punctual for our dates, and after we moved in together, he always came straight home from work. He would always thank me whenever I cooked or did laundry. It's because he was so sincere and honest that I married him. But with him away and the constant criticism from my mother-in-law, my life felt unbearable.
I can't believe someone as useless as you married my son.
My heart was sinking into despair. Since my husband started working away from home, I've been constantly criticized and blamed by my mother-in-law. And my husband's recent confession deepened the despair I felt inside. His debts, the gambling issues, followed by an onslaught of more criticism from my mother-in-law. I couldn't handle it anymore, and one night, I left the house and found myself crying on a park bench. Then one day, my mother-in-law discovered a secret from my past. At dinner, she used it as ammunition against me.
So, I heard you used to work in a nightclub, huh? Shame on you for raising my grandchild after working in such a place. How did you find out about that? I was telling an acquaintance about how useless my son's wife is and showed them a picture of you. They recognized you. Apparently, you weren't even good at that nightclub job.
In my past, frustrated with a mother who never worked and always partied, I left my family home. Struggling for money, I found work at a nightclub. It was a time from before I married my husband. A secret I believed even he didn't know. I was at a loss for words. I had never imagined my mother-in-law would discover this about my past. And she continued to use this secret to berate me further.
I can't believe someone like you is the mother of my grandchild. I'll tell my son and have you kicked out.
The depth of my despair grew even deeper. My married life with my husband, all the efforts I've made, and the future I had envisioned. It felt as if everything was taken away with her words. The communication from my husband dwindled. I feared he had started to doubt and suspect me. One night, alone in my room, I reflected on my life. Meeting my husband, our marriage, and our current circumstances. And the constant blame and accusations from my mother-in-law. I felt I couldn't go on like this. I can't take it anymore. Whispering these words, I walked out into the lonely nighttime streets. The quiet streets echoed the hopelessness I felt inside. My mother-in-law's words resonated in my head. My past, my secrets, and my present. Everything became a target for her criticism and blame. I sat on a bench in a park, staring up at the sky. Not a single star was visible. My heart felt just as dark. Suddenly, someone approached.
Mom? Why are you here?
My daughter sat next to me, holding my hand.
Mom, don't let Grandma get to you. You work hard at an IT company, and you've been through so much. You're strong.
Thank you. But maybe Grandma has a point.
Mom, Grandma's just stuck in the past. In today's world, you should be proud of any job you've done. I'm proud you worked at a nightclub.
Really?
Yes. Because it shows you've always tried your best for us, no matter the circumstances. Don't let Grandma's words control you.
Hearing my daughter's words warmed my heart, and I couldn't hold back my tears.
Mom, you're working hard in IT now, right? That's amazing. I'll always be on your side, no matter what Grandma says.
Gratitude for my daughter filled my heart. Her support gave me hope that, together, we could overcome any challenges. Later, in my husband's study, I took a deep breath before delving into a mountain of paperwork. I meticulously checked each document, trying to uncover his secrets. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan agreements. Slowly, my husband's financial situation became clearer.
Why did this happen?
I found several receipts from gambling activities. Horse racing, slot machines, casinos. Thinking about how much money he had squandered on these activities was heart-wrenching. Next, I turned on my husband's PC. The password was his birthday, but reversed. His mailbox was flooded with collection emails from financial institutions and messages from friends demanding repayment of loans. Furthermore, I found a plethora of promotional emails from gambling-related sites. I decided to calculate how much my husband had spent on gambling. The result was an astounding $3 million, far beyond my estimation. Seeing that amount, I temporarily panicked. But there's no time to lose. I began to plan on securing funds to maintain our livelihood. I considered my savings, the expected amount from selling our high-end electronics and luxury goods at home, and the savings from my salary. After that, I continued my own investigation. I strived daily, reaching out to financial institutions to grasp the details of how much my husband owed and where, and by obtaining credit information in his name. A few days later, I came up with a plan. I began preparations to build a life without relying on my husband or mother-in-law, while also figuring out a strategy to repay my husband's debts. Capitalizing on my experience in the IT industry, I decided to join freelance projects. For several days, I created a portfolio and registered on a website introducing freelance jobs. Then, a few days later, I received my first request from a client.
This will help a bit with our living expenses.
In between daily work, I reviewed our household finances. I canceled unnecessary subscription services, cut down on wasteful spending, and researched recipes for savings. I successfully reduced our daily food expenses as much as possible. Moreover, based on information from local mom friends, I tried participating in a community yard sale. I managed to sell some brand items and unnecessary electronics we had, earning a decent amount. A few weeks later, my activities as a freelancer were going smoothly, and I felt that my income was becoming stable. By then, my bank account had a firm amount necessary for living expenses. When I came home, all of my mother-in-law's belongings were gone. Simultaneously, my phone rang. The caller was my mother-in-law.
Oh, are you already home? Noticed our stuff is gone? What are you trying to say? My son and I are starting a luxurious life abroad with his $3 million. Once you two divorce, you won't be able to make ends meet. If you want our address, get on your knees and lick my shoes.
I couldn't help but chuckle.
Actually, that $3 million is a debt. Stop joking. There's no way my son has that kind of debt. You might not believe it, but it's true. In his study, there's transaction records from banks and financial institutions, credit card bills, contracts, and more. Plus, on his PC, there are collection emails from financial institutions, messages from friends demanding repayment, and promotional emails from gambling sites. If you don't believe me, why don't you check? You're lying. It's the result of him getting deeply into gambling. Horse racing, slot machines, casinos. All in all, it amounts to a whopping $3 million. I just sent you photos of the evidence. Maybe you should take a look? I had no idea. He probably didn't want you to know. But it doesn't change the facts. I've been pondering how to deal with this massive debt, but I guess I don't have to anymore.
My mother-in-law took a deep breath in silence.
I truly didn't know. I don't know what to say.
Without saying another word, I hung up. I resolved to start a new life from this point on. I was shocked by the actions of my husband and mother-in-law, but moving forward, there's nothing to do but forge ahead for the future of my daughter and me. Later on, my husband called.
I'm so sorry. Truly, I am.
His voice was more subdued than I'd ever heard it. Yet, my anger didn't subside.
Why did it come to this? Our family is falling apart because of you.
I never thought it would come to this. But when I decided to go overseas with Mom, I couldn't see a future with you and our daughter. I was flabbergasted by his words.
You couldn't see? It's because of your carelessness and lack of planning that our family is in this mess.
I know that. But it's too late now. I made a promise to Mom.
Promise? What promise? One to sacrifice our daughter's future and grab a paradise just for yourselves?
My husband was silent for a while.
Did you truly love our family?
I did. But now, it's different. At that point, his voice broke and I could hear him crying.
Don't hurt us anymore. My daughter and I are gonna live on our own from now on. We'll forget about you.
He didn't say anything back. I could only hear his sobbing from the other end. Calmly, I hung up the phone. The reason my mother-in-law confused assets with debts was due to a bill of $3 million that suddenly arrived at our home. She mistook the $3 million bill for a lottery-winning notice. She began planning her dream relocation overseas and approached my husband about it. Unaware of his mother's misunderstanding, and thinking starting a new life overseas would allow him to escape the debt problem, he accepted her proposal. Mistaking a bill for a lottery notice? After that, I kept my anger towards my husband and began looking for a lawyer. I was set on preparing for a divorce, claiming compensation for emotional distress and child support. Now, a new life was about to start. A life for me and my daughter, independent from my husband and mother-in-law. I consulted with a lawyer about the divorce, emotional distress compensation, and child support claims. During this period, my daughter and I spent a lot of quality time together, and she became my strongest supporter. She fully understood my decision and chose to stay with me. Hearing her words made all the hardships, disputes with my husband and mother-in-law, worth it, and I couldn't help but shed tears. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and husband were struggling with their life overseas. Despite starting a new life there, they apparently faced continuous problems due to a lack of preparation and financial issues. Furthermore, after being pickpocketed and losing their funds, they faced even more difficulties due to the language barrier. In the end, they were deported for overstaying their visas. Later, I negotiated with my husband through the lawyer.
The divorce is finalized. We've agreed that he'll pay the emotional distress compensation and child support in one lump sum. Thank you. Now I can finally start a new life. But all at once? Wouldn't it be better in installments?
My husband took on even more debt, seemingly borrowing money from some shady loan shark. I don't know what happened to him after that, and honestly, I don't care. After being evicted from her rental property and getting pickpocketed, losing all her savings, my mother-in-law ended up homeless upon her return to the US. My daughter and I started our new life. Sure, it wasn't always easy, but freed from my husband and mother-in-law, we could look to the future positively. I want to live happily, collaborating with my daughter, who saved me from the depths of despair.